hypothetically, you didn't have to do that.
Yeah, let's say hypothetically, I said no. I don't want to give my son one drop of my blood so he can stay alive. And my motivating reasons was because I had a really big life insurance policy on him. So this would be morally permissible?
Yes, you are not compelled. It has nothing to do with the life insurance policy. It has nothing.
Wait a minute. It is crazy that this conversation even needs to be had regarding as far as parents keeping their children alive.
You are saying.
I'll make this even more absurd, right? I'll make this even more absurd. Talk to it like, what if like the only way to prevent my child from dying was to like spit?
Worcester is not a word.
You're just sitting here telling me that a child has special rights over parents. That they have. Hold on.
Who the hell said that?
You.
Talk to it. Hold on, bro. Hold on. Yeah. So like, if the only way to prevent my child from dying was all I had to do was spit in their mouth, do you think I should be like obligated to spit in their mouth?
No.
You are not required to use your body to sustain another human being's life.
Yeah, that's absurd, bro.
Except the other human being I created, but that's insane.
Think about what you.
Yeah, I think I'm
giving.
I think I would probably
Literally give up my entire life for my children.
That's your choice.
Hold on.
It's not a choice, that's my obligation.
Hold on. I think I would be obligated to do this for you. Like, I think that the only way for me to you to survive, right, and not die is I'm the only person, right, that like if I had to spit in your mouth, you could survive. I think I would be obligated to spit in your mouth.
You would never be obligated to do and to give organs.
Yeah, you should be.
Yeah, and so what I'm saying is, when you start going down that line of thinking, right, you're saying if a child is 30 years old, they can just demand a parent to give them organs, or we can demand anybody to give organs. Why should it only be a parent?
Look. When it comes to like organ donation, right, I don't think you should be obligated to donate any like major organs. Like, I don't think you're obligated in certain circumstances, as long as it's not going to cause you like great bodily harm, or in the moment, or
and that's what Misty has said earlier.
That means you should use great bodily harm.
You know, when I proposed the idea that parents must be obligated to their children for tissue donation, I actually stipulated, but that's probably when your head went up your own ass, when I stipulated that so long as it will not cause the parent to be in any immediate danger. You seem to think that a parent ought not to be obligated to even donate blood to save the life of their own child.
They're not, and they should not.
Oh my God.
Yeah, that's what.
Is that what this leads to? Is that us parents should not be obligated to do anything to keep our children alive?
Hold on for a second. Hold on. But you guys don't see.
How do you follow other people's things? Like somebody at Special Olympics calling the genius sitting here while you're being working. So go ahead and come back.
Right. And it's a luxury couch. And it's a 3-carat diamond ring.
Oh.
Yeah. I'm talking about the relationship. Your relationship with your father.
You're arguing for a literal government to enable trafficking. Like, you're saying no immediate.
I'm sorry. I was you're gonna have to thread the needle here, but not requiring parents to give tissue to their child who is in danger
because
would lead to trafficking. No, don't tell me what I'm saying. Don't tell me what I'm saying. Make the argument. Well, then start. You can start. You can start. You're not telling me. You're not telling me what I'm saying. You can start by not telling me what I'm saying. Make the argument as to how this would lead to that.
Okay, sure. You're granting special privileges to the child by saying the child is entitled.
How is that granting special privileges?
The child is entitled to the organs, whatever organs that it.
Did I say organs or did I say tissue?
You said as long as it doesn't cause immediate bodily harm.
I said, hold on. Is all the tissue organs?
You didn't specify. You said as long as it doesn't cause.
I said tissue. No, I know. I didn't specify. Right. You decided to specify for me. So you tried to basically add on to what my hypothetical. Yes, but
Okay, so then it would apply to what you just said.
organs, tissue.
Tissue is tissue.
Centers glide into the dots. We're ready to get things back going again. And they win the draw on their own end.
No, all your organs have blood, yes, but your blood is
I didn't say all of it. Okay, they all have tissue.
Yeah.
So you said tissue. Your qualifier
Yeah,
is
so,
tissue.
that's right. But you were saying
You apply, right?
not necessarily.
But you just said tissue. And we're not tissue.
Yeah, that's
Hold
right.
on for a second. Hawk 2. I want to ask you one question that's as sincere as like I can be, right? When we have these type of conversations, we do it, one, to change hearts and minds. In particular, we're trying to change the hearts and minds of the people listening. So, like, there's only 15 people in here right now, right? But 15 people have heard you say that I don't have to give my child a drop of blood to keep him alive. 15 people have heard you say that I don't even have to know. Excuse me, Bahati.
Oh my
Stop.
God! Shut the mouth, girl.
I'm like, he's speaking so, but I speak about
Shut up.
Bye, Bahati.
Thank you.
Okay, so you've said that I don't have to give one drop of blood to keep my child alive. I don't even have to spit in my child's mouth to keep him alive. I don't have to provide breast milk to keep my child alive. Basically, I could just let my child just run alive, right? Yeah, you did.
In the case of the emergency, when there's no other way, then yeah. But if we're talking about just normal circumstances, you can put them up for adoption.
Yeah,
Why
but
should
it
she even
doesn't
be
matter.
obligated to do that?
Hold on for a second, right? We could say, okay, that it would be an emergency situation with a child in utero because just like, okay, in these situations that we stated, we're the only people that can keep these children alive. So the same would apply to utero. So I don't know what you think you're doing there.
At 6 months, at 6 weeks, can it survive outside of utero on its own?
Yeah,
sure.
So there's no other alternative at that point.
Yeah, it can survive outside. Sure.
No, it cannot survive outside of
Yeah,
6 weeks, sir.
Yeah, it can.
Can you give me a source that says that a fetus can survive outside of 6 weeks?
Basically, Pooh's saying it can only happen for such a short period of time. The time is not what matters. It's the fact that it still can in a matter of time.
It would instantly
That's a
die.
presumption. That's a presumption.
That's not a presumption.
What do you mean? What do you mean by survive?
Hey. If you're talking about whether or not it can survive outside of the womb, number one, this would be another fallacy on your behalf, right? Because you came up here and you stated bodily autonomy as your motivating principle. Okay, now that principle is challenged, you're obfuscating onto another principle, which would be viability, right?
Not obviously, because I was not allowed to explain.
Viability would
Here in the late going to the frame. Philadelphia's got a
It's a whole baby.
Yeah, that's fair. I could even just agree with you that expecting a parent to, if it's a hypothetical scenario where the only person available that can give blood that's going to save the child's life would be the parent, I could grant that would be something that should be expected of them. I don't think I would ever think that like an organ should be donated. I definitely feel like that crosses the threshold of,
Yeah, well, that's fine. And Ev, you can kind of take back over here if you want to, but then you...
I'd have to speak to you.
Yeah?
It's important to know. Like this, I was going to see this mommy's death. And he told me to wait. You know that? Because you want to have more space here. Yeah. You see the chair? The chair in my bed. I will sit here. You will put this away. You buy the city downstairs, and so you go in with that smoking. You have a small place, that's it.
Yeah, that's fine.
Well, a fun night of hockey comes to an end, but guess what, everybody? There's always next time, and we will see you then. For Cheryl Pounder, I'm James Cebulski. Thanks for playing.
Just just down there.
Well, there would be. It's not just. Yeah, suffering could also be psychological, like an unwanted experience, I guess. Equating grave and debauchery involves that harm, and especially children. So there you go.
Yes, I apologize for reading it off. So, it's for church and state within America, headed by the founding institution and Christian James Madison, I'm mostly going to be borrowing from his argument in Renaissance. This is from James Madison. The argument is to Christian nationalism, as we see it today in America. Violate state equality, which
Well, the specific book comes from Thomas Jefferson. But again, it's just an opinion. It's not the law of the land. Like the letter from the Dansbury Baptist Convention. Now she said James Madison, right? But what does that even mean? Because obviously there were laws based off Christianity in the country's history. I mean, there were the Comstock laws, there were the sodomy laws, and other things like that.
The basis of every law which is indispensable. A proportion of the validity or expediency of a new law is more liable to be impeached. If all men are by nature equally free and independent, men are to be considered as entering into society on equal conditions, as relinquishing no more and therefore retaining no less, other than another, of their natural rights. Above all, they are to be considered as retaining an equal title to the free exercise of religion according to the dictates of conscience. Whilst we assert for ourselves freedom to embrace, to profess, and to observe the religion which we believe to be of divine origin, we cannot deny an equal freedom to those minds who have not yet yielded to the evidence which has convinced us. If this freedom be abused, it is an offense against God, and not against man. To God, therefore, not to man, must an account of it be rendered. Are the liberal Christians the only sects who think a compulsive support of the religion necessary and unnecessary and unwarrantable? Can liberal Christians' piety alone be entrusted with the care of public worship? Christianity does not need legal protection or support to exist more than any other religion. To say that it is a contradiction to the Christian religion itself. For every page of it disavows a dependence on the powers of this world. It is a contradiction to fact, for it is known that this religion both existed and flourished, not only without the support of human laws, but in spite of every opposition from them, and not only during the period of miraculous aid, but long after it had been left to its own evidence and the ordinary care of providence. Nay, it is a contradiction in terms, for a religion not invented by human policy must have pre-existed and been supported before it was established by human policy. It is moreover to weaken in those who profess this religion as pious confidence in its innate excellence and the patronage of its author, and to foster in those who still reject it a suspicion that its friends are too conscious of its fallacies to trust its own merits. In the words of Paul toward the Corinthians, where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is liberty.
Your word is cheap. Your word is slow.
Slow down.
Yeah.
Easy. Downward.
Yeah.
Low. Gain.
No. Cheap. Sale.
They're not even good ads.
Load. Pick a middle.
Right. All right. Thank you both for your opening statements. Well, feel free to just jump on in.
I guess we can do that. I'm interested to see where we agree and where we disagree, because I think
We agree in a lot of, I would guess.
Yeah.
Suspect.
Because it sounds like I'm trying to understand your big concern with whatever is called Christian nationalism, that it's just going to oppress people or impose moral burdens on them or standards on them that's unjust to impose on them. Is that your basic concern?
So my main concern, I'm going to focus on American Christian nationalism, because I would probably grant there's a logically possible Christian nationalist movement that I might be fully for. But in America, I know how I feel very distinctly about it.
Yeah, because I gave an example of there are countries where Catholicism is a state religion, like Monaco, Malta is basically like a Catholic country.
Yeah.
I like that. I think it's...
Like Liechtenstein as well, I think. Very small country, but countries nonetheless. I mean, those are basically Catholic. Like, the state and the law is basically the same thing.
But America, you feel different?
Yes. In America, I think that theocracy is going to be an inevitable conclusion of American Christian nationalism, and they mostly lay this at the feet of evangelical Protestantism. That it is a very... we can get into it. I'll stay there. Lay it largely at the feet, but broadly, because Christians are more than just Protestants, I think the movement of American Christian nationalism is leading to the inevitable conclusion of a robbing of rights.
What kind of rights do you think would be robbed? That you're most worried about?
I would be worried about people's freedom of association, freedom of religion.
Can you give me specific examples? Like, they would lose the ability to do this particular thing.
Not particularly, because I can't future predict into the... Like, I can't say, this is exactly what U.S. American Christian nationalists would do. I can say, like, what they talk about. But
like, you would lose the right to do X.
I would be concerned about greater pressure, for example, to teach Christianity in public schools. I'd be concerned about tests being greater insisted upon, or Christian identity for our politicians. I would be concerned increasingly about a Christian insistence on policy based exclusively on the Bible, not policy based on the good of the nation. I would be concerned about it corrupting the political leaders.
This is why I'm terrible.
Madison raises this. Actually,
because they're not creating
trust. Issue with Christian nationalism. So I think it corrupts the religion. It's really bad for the religion. But secondary to that is I think it's bad for the state.
Well, I don't necessarily even disagree with you about the religion. I've seen state-sponsored churches where they fall apart, they rest on their laurels, they just take tax money from the state and they atrophy. That's happening.
Orthodox Church is in a really dismal place right now because of...
German Catholic Church has the same problem.
Oh, I don't know.
Well, in Germany there is a tax. You have to, your tithes are mandatorily given to the religion you go to. So you I disagree.
Yeah, so that would be a typical policy that I think that we see early on. James Madison fighting against Christian nationalism. The difference thing is, where could Christian nationalism go? I don't know. I'm not going to say it will necessarily be the Handmaid's Tale.
But here's the way that I look at it, though, that eventually you are going to have to impose something on people, including things that they think are their religious freedoms. So my concern is that there's no such thing as true state neutrality on several issues. I will give you two examples. So the state cannot be neutral on the question, who is a person with a right to life?
What do you mean by neutrality? Do you mean like moral neutrality, or like
moral and legal? As in the state doesn't the state doesn't talk about issue. So so for example, which religion is true? Like in America, the state is neutral. Like the state doesn't tell us which religion is true, but the state does tell us who is and isn't a person. So one example would be who is a person, and another example would be what is marriage. The state can't be neutral on this, so some value system is going to be imposed. So I think that if secular liberalism can be imposed, we can critique it, and if there's something better, we should impose that. I think Christian ethics are going to be better. So I'll give you an example. So in the 19th century, there was a Supreme Court case called Reynolds versus the United States. It dealt with Mormon polygamy.
Yes.
Mormons, it's their religion. The guy can have as many wives as he wants, I guess. And should they be allowed to have multiple wives?
Yes, this is a very... I don't know the ins and outs of this, this case. They didn't even create chances. Just getting out of here.
Pounder's got the puck and he's walking the blue line. Shakes off the coverage.
I don't know the ins and outs of that Supreme Court case, but I do know what it's about. So basically, it's about, as he's going to explain, basically it's about Mormons, because fundamentalist Mormons. So there's two main branches of Mormonism. There's the mainstream Mormons, and there's the fundamentalist Mormons. The fundamentalist Mormons are a very small minority of the group. But those are the people who believe that, like, that men can have multiple spouses, polygamy, right? And basically what he's going to explain, this is a new video, but I already have a gist of it, but basically, right, when you use the religious freedom aspect, right, basically anybody can make up a religion and exploit the system, because, well, people are going to say, right, well, even though this is illegal, you see, in my religion, this is a very, very, this is a very important ritual, or blah, 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 right? The Supreme Court shot that down, and it made it illegal, polygamy illegal, right? So because the slippery slope, not slippery slope fallacy, but the slippery slope would be, well, if you can use a religion to break laws, then everybody's just going to make up their own religion and just get away with laws, right? Like, you could just make up your own religion. Oh, well, my religion, my God's, it's okay to molest children, so that exception should be allowed. Well, that's the reason why.
Their religion. Can we impose our laws on them? And
yes, we can impose our laws on them, and we just did. Polygamy is illegal in almost everywhere in the entire country.
And also the Supreme Court said that if religious liberty means you can do whatever you want because your religion says so, the law would exist in name only.
Yes,
I knew. If you had people,
I knew he was going to say that because he's already said this point. I've seen him say this point before. It was a very big Supreme Court case.
You're like, well, I'm going to be an Aztec. I'm going to sacrifice my children for the corn crops this year. So would you agree? We're always going to be limiting people's sincerely held beliefs.
To some degree, that's the nature of the state. Okay. My question to you would be, what do you think would happen with Christian nationalism? Do you think that Christian nationalism in America today, if Christian nationalists have what they want, do you think that it would look like the American James Madison was envisioning, or that Americans are thinking about? What do you think it would look like?
Well, I think it'd probably look a lot different because people wouldn't be enslaved. That would be nice. It would be a lot different. Well, like in the time of James Madison, there was a large portion of the United States population that were enslaved. They didn't have a right to liberty.
Yeah, I don't think Christian nationalists would roll back, for example.
Right. But there were people who were arguing for and against slavery with religious arguments for and against, and so the state can't be neutral on that question. I think to answer your question, what's hard is, like I said in my opening, Christian nationalism is just such a broad thing as to what it is doing. I think on the far end, where you try to get the church to replace the state, I think things would go poorly, and that would be theocracy. So theocracy is when the state is directly controlled by religious leaders. Yeah. That might be popular among some Christian nationalists, but I don't think there's many of them.
Well, theocracy is two things. It's when it's run by religious leaders, but also in the definition is that the legal system is based on religious law. And I do see Christian nationalists, for example. So
there's where I would draw a hard line, that I would consider that more like Catholic integralism or Christian nationalism, in the sense that we have to have some kind of way to judge our laws to make sure they're just.
Like, again, Monaco is not really a theocracy, I would say. It's just heavily influenced. I mean, there's a difference between being influenced by religion and, like, the religious leaders controlling the state. Like Vatican City is a theocracy. The Pope is literally the head of the country.
They should not use Christian principles to do that.
Sure, my argument to this would be you should use only Christian principles if you're a statesman, right? So I have kind of two prongs of why Christian nationalism in America is concerning. One, I think the inevitable conclusion of current American Protestant evangelicalism is theocracy. I think actually a lot of Christians, I think just recently they said that they think that Trump is the second coming, and they actually are okay with him being the king. just there are many Christian nationalists that are just.
I would be the best king that you ever had. Much better than those other kings.
What's terrifying is it's not just
that King George.
Yeah, it's not just like small time people. There was large Christian speakers on stages. I was watching. I can't remember his name. It's got this blonde, golden, beautiful responses. He was on the stage of thousands of people watching, talking about how he wants Trump to be the king, right? And so I think that's really concerning, because you and I can agree theocracies are bad, not good, okay? But the second thing is I actually think that Christians ought not make moral compromises, and I think political leaders must a lot of the time. And having a state in which, for example, well, you have to basically be a Christian to lead. Very huge concerns about that, because I think that there are many choices that certain political leaders will need to make for the goodness of their state, to be a good leader of the state, that maybe a Christian ought not make. And that would be a huge concern as well, is that I don't think that it leads to,
Well, okay, so I have two thoughts on that. First, I think that Christians should absolutely be involved in politics. I wouldn't
say that I know. Is that a rebuttal to me?
Yeah, were you concerned about Christians being involved in politics? Then what was your...
I said Christians ought not make moral compromises, but political leaders must.
Right, but that sounds like if you're a Christian political leader, you're going to have to make compromises.
Probably, yeah.
So if you don't want doing that, it sounds like you're saying you don't want Christian leaders in politics.
I think they can be in politics, but I think it's really hard. I think, frankly, it's really hard. And so is there, like, can I imagine a world where you've got kind of a senator, he doesn't get involved in everything, he focuses a lot of his policy and bill making on only the things that are aligned with his Christian ethics and stuff like that, and that's about it, and he uses logic and reason and compelling to get the votes for it. I think that that's actually fine.
Well,
I have no problem with
why
that.
can't you just vote for the things that don't contradict his moral principles, and then he works against the other things? I don't think it has to be that limited. But so I'll give you an example. In John Paul II's Gospel of Life, he wrote an encyclical on abortion and other offenses against human life. In paragraph 73, he talked about, what do you do if you were a politician who was against abortion? You would ban abortion. But you can't fully ban it. So, because you go for limited laws, like let's say, we're going to just ban abortion for birth control, believe it for the hard cases. Can you, as a faithful Catholic, do that? And so what the Pope said is, yes, as long as people know you're personally opposed and your goal in the law is to limit evil, not expand it. Because politics is the art of the possible. Sometimes you want political capital, get everything you want.
I think a valid critique of that would be going, well, you're still necessarily enabling, to some degree, the poor behavior. Because you're compromising, right? You're still allowing it somewhat in edgewise.
But that's like saying if there was 100 drowning children and I only have the resources to save 90 of them, I shouldn't save the 90 because I'm so complicit in the other 10. I don't want the other...
I guess it would be more like you have, in order to save 90 children, you might have to, like, shoot one in the head, right? That would be more like the type of compromise situation.
No, it isn't, because...
Or you have to let somebody torture that child a little bit, right? And it's like, I want the political leader to make the choice to torture the child a little bit. I think the Christian gets 50.
I'll make it better, G. So it'd be like there are 100 children drowning, and 90 of them are being drowned by
This was actually the debate I was really anticipating. I actually wanted them to have. So I wanted these two to debate each other.
Skinny, scrawny guys. And so I can easily beat them up and save those kids. The other 10 are 300-pound jiu-jitsu black belts. So it's like, I know some jiu-jitsu, not enough to beat a...
You'll be fine.
Not enough to beat a 300... Only not enough for a 300-pound black belt. So it's like, I'm not letting them... So when I choose to intervene to save some of the kids and stop the people killing some of them, the others, letting them... It's just, I don't have the power to stop them yet, but I hope one day I will.
Sure,
well, it's the same
but
with
I would say that in that instance, I think
I don't have the power to save all the babies, but I hope one day I will.
But perhaps the Christian argument would be, maybe in this situation, you should throw yourself at them anyways, because it would be the right thing to do, to try to save them, even if you'll fail, because the glory is the kingdom of God. It's not just the outcomes, right? And I think that
But if letting them beat me up so the other 90 kids die anyways,
it's not
then that's but I want to be rational and save as many as I can without doing evil.
Sure.
And I'm not doing evil by just recognizing I don't have the power to stop these other people yet.
Sure.
Here's the other thing I want to bring up about theocracy. What I also worry about your critique.
Yeah.
This is just a critique of any value system. Because secular liberalism will always try to make the president a king to do what they want. I mean, people treat Trump like a king. People also did the same with Obama or Biden. Maybe not as bold, fancy, and flourish, but they want them to just put in as many policies as possible that they support. That's everybody gets that way.
Sure, I think that selfish voters typically just want what they're self-interested in to have. But I think the founding fathers or Christians and deists who made the nation were very intentional about building separation of church and state. And I think there's a lot of people, secular and Christian, who sympathize with these things, right? And so I don't think that this is a critique of the secular system necessarily. What I'm saying here specifically is that
What a back and forth affair tonight on the ice.
Well, and every play matters, right, James? I mean, when you're on the ice, you know that you have to win your shift. It's that close of a game. I just love playing in these ones.
Great energy here in the barn.
Christians shouldn't make moral compromises, and necessarily political leaders must. And I think the example you give is a good one, because I would agree, as a leader, you should make the rational choice to not throw yourself at the 10 men that can kill you. I think that that's totally fine. Or
If because of that, it will stop me from...
What you want to do is save hundreds with Liberty Mutual customizes your car insurance. That's great, but can you ask your friend to...
Just emotional support human. You always...
me from saving the other 90.
Sure.
I just can't fight them yet, but one
I think
day I
there's
will.
a completely valid Christian argument, as if you were just an individual, to say maybe you should try to say that, hey, my name is Hannah and I just released a song called Bitch and you should go listen to it. But before you do, this is what I think Teenage Dirtbag. As a leader, you should make the rational choice. To not throw yourself at the 10 men that can kill you.
Video games that have lost their identity.
That's totally fine.
Star Wars Battlefront 2, how does the game hold up almost 10 years after it released? It's really crazy how active this game still is. If you weren't aware, yesterday was May the 4th, so a bunch of people were hopping on, and I was finding lobbies left and right super easily, even on PC. And man, this game is just so good. I wish we had a Star Wars Battlefront 3 on the way, because look at this game. It just looks incredible. There's just such a plethora of content in the game. There's so many weapons and maps, heroes, abilities, and eras that you can work through. There's just so much to do in the game because it got updated for years and years after it came out. There's even a whole single player campaign. Then there's all the special game modes like Ewok Hunt, which are a horror type one, and there's just a lot to be doing. Not to mention the game's on Xbox Game Pass, and it frequently goes on sale for $5 or less. So if you haven't picked it up, it's definitely a steal, and people are still playing this game. And hell, I'm gonna say something crazy. I actually had more fun playing this than I have in Battlefield 6 recently. The maps are just so vibrant and well designed, and coming from a big Star Wars fan, I think they're all incredible. But yeah, Star Wars Battlefront 2 is still a banger in 20.
Because of that, it will stop me from saving the other 90.
Sure.
I just can't fight them yet, but one day I will.
Naming Star Wars characters until someone completely... A New Jersey elementary school teacher is accused of sexually abusing a student for years and having his baby, despite being the child himself. This shocking case came to light after the alleged victim's father noticed an uncanny resemblance between the teacher's baby and his own son. Now, the teacher is facing serious charges as disturbing details emerge from their alleged relationship. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law and Crime. I'm Jesse Redmond.
The Icebreakers take possession in the defensive end.
Everybody, this is a Law and Crime legal alert. Did you know that children are being diagnosed with serious conditions like type 2 diabetes and non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, and the research is potentially linking ultra-processed foods to this? Yeah, and important is stepping in to fight to hold these food companies accountable. With decades of experience fighting large corporations, they are ready to stand up for what families deserve, justice. So if your child under 21 has been diagnosed with type 2 diabetes or fatty liver disease, then visit www.forthepeople.com/food to learn more. 34-year-old Laura Karen was a fifth-grade teacher at Middle Township Elementary School out in New Jersey when she was arrested last week for child sex crimes. Prosecutors say she raped a student from 2016 to 2020, starting when he was just 11 years old. But here's where the case takes an even more disgusting and disturbing turn, because in 2019, when the victim was 13, Karen allegedly gave birth to his child. She was 28 at the time. So how did authorities uncover this? How did they find out about this alleged abuse? This is different. So it all started with a social media post, apparently, because it's being reported that in December of 2024, the victim's father made a Facebook post pointing out that Karen's 5-year-old child bore a striking resemblance to both himself and his son, the alleged victim in this case. This post apparently raised a lot of red flags and sparked an investigation. We have a lot to get into. I want to talk about this more. I want to bring on former prosecutor and current sexual misconduct investigator Dan Shore, who's also the author of 2 books. Am I right, Dan? What are the titles of those books? In case we
one is called Final Table, which came out a couple of years ago, and the new novel coming out in August that'll be distributed by Simon & Schuster. It's called Open Bar. They're both about sexual misconduct issues, and you can find them on Amazon, anywhere else that books are sold.
All right, sounds good. So now I'm happy to have you here to talk about this, because this is a weird one. I mean, it's a disturbing one, but the idea that the victim's father had seen and made this post, and that's what sparked an investigation. Does it usually happen like that?
It's certainly unusual, and we live in an age where people are posting their thoughts on Facebook in a very unfiltered way, and usually you think if a father suspected that, you would go straight to law enforcement or to a school authority. Here, law enforcement started with a Facebook post where he was saying that the child looks like him and his son. And people unfortunately picked up on that, and it's important that if someone sees something online and there's an indication that there might be something egregious that happens, such as child sex abuse, that someone did escalate that and did get some law enforcement, they were able to investigate it, because a lot of times people see things online and they just figure, well, it's not my problem, I'm not going to do anything about it. Apparently other people did raise flags about this, and that led to this investigation and this arrest.
I covered a case recently where somebody posted on social media, Harold's platform, that they were the victim of abuse that was going on at the school, and that, these things sparked, things go viral, videos go viral. People said, oh, that same thing happened to me. And so it's amazing when you think about the power of social media. Talk about the negative influences of it, the powerful influences of it, actually spreading message and gaining awareness and traction. And you're seeing something like that. Now, going back to this case, according to detectives, Karen reportedly been this victim's 5th-grade teacher, as well as his brothers, and she reportedly befriended their parents, gaining their trust, even offering to babysit the couple's 3 children at her home, which is what we're about to get into, is where much of this abuse happened. It's usually a step where somebody will befriend the parents, that's a way to get into that household, bring the children into their environment. You go after the parents, you go after the family. That becomes even more concerning about who you trust.
Absolutely. I think the stereotype in society for parents is to worry about the child being grabbed in a park by a stranger or on a playground. And people, there's a stranger danger that if I turn my head for a few seconds, my child's going to be taken or something dangerous is going to happen. Those things do happen, but the much greater danger in society is people that you trust, people that ingratiate themselves to a family, become people who the family looks to as someone, well, they're safe because they're with this person who you know. And unfortunately, most cases of sex abuse that I've seen in my career, and I've been investigating these for about 25 years, they generally involve people that the parents knew or the child knew. And those are the ones that are often ones who are committing acts like this. And it's tough when you want to trust someone. I know as a parent, you want to trust the people in your community, you want to trust the caregivers. Those are often the people who abuse that trust. Or at least the people who get sex abuse tend to be the ones who are in positions of trust.
But unfortunately, you are very right. That's a big issue that we're seeing a lot, particularly the disorders we have about sidebar now. First, these kids, their sister, they would have these sleepovers. They had these sleepovers in Karen's home. Eventually, for some reason that hasn't been released, the victim and his siblings, they started living full-time with Karen. In fact, during her first appearance, the night here last week, the judge referred to Karen as a resource family children, which is in New Jersey, understanding it's referred to as foster parents. And Karen attended that hearing virtually, by the way, from jail. But during an interview with detectives, the victim's sister told them some very chilling details about what she witnessed. She said that she would often wake up to find her brother sleeping in Karen's bed, despite the fact that kids shared a room upstairs. Even more disturbing is that Karen would enter the bathroom and lock the door when her brother was showering. He wants to witness Karen sexually assaulting his brother when they thought he was asleep. And by the way, man, just to stop there, it's one thing in a lot of these cases we have testimony, potential testimony of the victim, the child themselves, like the trial there for the victim once who testified. Now you have other eyewitnesses, other children. That raises this to a different level.
Definitely, this child sex abuse generally does happen with no one else around, so it is hard sometimes to prove those cases. And of course,
I'm not coming on Saturday. Stop for cash.
The officials are in position, and both teams are getting ready as they get set for another face-off here. Caps won the draw, now look to set up. And that's blocked from someone in front. Here they come on the attack. Oh, you might call that friendly fire as it goes off one of his teammates. And then a collision with some authority. And he rings the post. It goes off the outside of the post. And this one comes to an end. Great team effort, but more specifically, a great
if you got hit, even if you were living, you need to try this.
Because if you were in defendant, all defendants are innocent until proven guilty. We'll hear as this case proceeds what her defense is, but certainly having another sibling who's saying that they witnessed something, including the actions that you described, that supports the allegations here in a significant way. Now, from the defendant's side, they'll have to demonstrate if they decide to contest these charges, why the sister might be saying that if it's not true. But if it is true, that certainly corroborates the allegations. And we have a child here who is supposedly the biological son of the abusive victim. So just DNA testing from that will certainly prove that there was sex abuse that occurred since the son was underage in a very significant way. This isn't someone who was just barely underage. This is someone who is very underage, very young. And if this is true, this is a significant violation of trust and very damaging to that child.
Yep, 100%. You can't forget that it's so disturbing to say, but that baby is not only a living child who's now born into what is a very difficult set of circumstances, but also is now a key piece of evidence. Think about it like that. So, going back to what I mentioned before, one of the siblings also claimed that after that baby,
Valid Christian argument, as if you were just an individual, to say maybe you should try to save the 90 and then throw yourself at the 10.
I would agree with that. And so, for example, a Christian
leader, I don't want them to do that.
But a Christian would be justified, for example, and we can bring it back to abortion. And I want to talk about
a police officer is fired and arrested.
About that, because it's a nice concrete case of a disagreement we would have. That I would say a Christian is within their right to vote for a total ban on abortion. Is that maybe to say
voters? I'm not really talking voters can,
or a politician. He tries to pass it.
Talk about leaders.
Go for it. Odds are it's not going to pass.
I agree.
But I believe the other politician says, hey, I could ban abortion just for birth control. I have the votes to get that tomorrow. I think he's also within his rights to propose that it will save children, and it's not evil for him to do that.
So I suspect that there's a misunderstanding of my position, which is my fault because I probably didn't make it clear. What I am not saying is that Christians shouldn't be in office. And what I'm not saying is that Christians don't have logical reasons for why they might compromise on certain things that they think is for the greater good. I think all of that is totally sound. What I am saying is that if we are insisting that our leaders are Christian, necessarily there's going to be conflict in these political leaders' lives where there is going to be compromise, where they allow, for example, the building of a mosque in their city, even though they think that mosque might be effective at converting people to a religion that's not Christianity, which to the political leader would say, you're necessarily allowing somebody who's damning people to hell, theoretically, in your city, and also to evangelize damning more people to hell. A political leader goes, well, we have religious freedoms for a reason, so I have to stand up. A religious leader, I think, gets and understand that it's a little bit difficult to hear. And so, what we're talking about for policymakers, Christians can be policymakers. Of course they can. Of course they can use their Christian ethics for why they believe what they believe. What they can't do is, and I'll read it just because I wrote it down so it's really simple. Whatever policy they want can come from only reason X, a religion. That's right. You need to justify it with practical logic and reason. So a Christian politician, and I think you actually do this a lot, you don't say abortion's bad because God said so, even though fundamentally that's going to be your predilection, right? That's fundamentally why you think abortion's bad. You also have a bunch of practical, logical reasons as to why you think it's bad as well. And you used your voice and argumentation to sway people to your side, to get, if you were the political leader, the votes to your side. Totally fine with me. I have no problem with that. The problem that I have is that a lot of Christian leaders go, being gay is bad because God said so, and I don't really care about making any practical reasons of logic. I just think God doesn't like it, so I'm going to find a way to force this policy through, regardless of how voters, because I can't practically, logically reason them into it unless they share my faith. Sure. So I'm going to force it through by my faith alone, by my belief alone. That is it is a problem.
Okay. So I would say that I agree with you on everything that's in to be equal. It's just the things I know are involved through divine revelation. And so I'm not necessarily those things. But there are many things that are greatly immoral that will know through divine revelation. And there is, of course. And so because of that, Christian leaders had to, I guess, like, so I would say this is like, leaders should always do correct.
We probably find the word good. And
which leaders should not make evil leaders or evil leaders. If they can choose between a good choice and an evil choice,
yeah, we're really here saying like you have this hypothetical where a leader has to choose between a grave evil of infinitely torturing a child in a room. But if he does so, it prevents his nation state from being nuked and destroyed. I actually want a political leader who makes that choice, even though they're Christian. I don't really want to do any child to an infinite torture.
Oh, good. And are you? Is your ethical system just utilitarianism?
No. I'm a divine command theorist.
You're what?
I'm a divine command theorist.
Where did God say it was okay to torture a child?
That's why I said I don't want to make that choice. But I do, as people, we were making a makes that choice. Because otherwise your preference is the leader just yields to the destruction and annihilation of your country. What if the thing that's threatening to destroy and annihilate your country is a country as well that we view as bad, right? We, of course, want our political leaders to choose our nation state succeeding. And I want them to make as many ethical choices as possible, all the time.
Any leader, regardless of their personal beliefs, they should not do evil so that good may come. And I think Christians are especially held to that standard. That's a divine command right there.
Of lying.
That's a complex issue about what counts as a lie.
Okay, let's say it's an explicit no lie. You need to lie to, for example, end something evil.
Yes.
Lie to the people, and you have to use propaganda to push it.
Okay.
Do we do that?
I would say it's similar to, there is a view of lying that says you can damage someone's beliefs, but only if you have a grave reason, just like you can damage their body if you have a grave reason. So if you're having an allergic reaction, I can cut your trachea open, stick a tube in to save your life. Just if it's just more convenient for me to slash you up, I certainly can't do that. Much the same, there may be cases like in war, for example, you have to deceive the enemy, and so you're going to engage in deception and lying or spying or things like
Yes.
that. But I don't want our political leaders just lying to us, like, oh, masks don't do anything. You know, that way to save the supply of them, things like that. Because when leaders lie, they get found out, that erodes public trust.
You talk about again,
But logic. Hold on, I want to go back. Let me go back. Because here's my big concern: that on a lot of these issues, I do feel like the other side, which you might call secular liberalism, it will end up basically imposing things that I would say are just another kind of religious view. The view that a person's right to life begins when they're born. I would
It's like a religion. Yeah.
that is just a religious view that people hold. And so if you want to say that the life value begins at conception, that's another religious view. But I would say it's one that's much more backed by reason and logic. And so it ought to be have a fair shake to be put into law.
Yeah, it feels like when you're saying religious view, you're talking about a philosophical view, right? And so a secular person is
Wait, but religion is, like I said, religion is philosophical in nature. It is. So, like, religion and philosophy are intertwined in some way. I mean, religion, I would say, like I said, religion is a form, like, is philosophy. Oh, dang, I looked at that. Does God exist? I even made a video about this. Does God exist is a philosophical question. It's one of the most pondered questions in all of human history. Is there a God? Which is a philosophical question. A met God, in any sense, but a Christian God, right? Does this metaphysical being, and metaphysics is also intertwined with philosophy, this metaphysical being, does he exist, right? That's obviously very philosophical.
going to have varying reasons for when they think personhood is conferred, whether it's through the birth canal, which I think is a very unsatisfying argument, but they're going to have satisfying, logical, rational arguments for whatever they believe, right? Consciousness.
No, not necessarily. They might.
Not sure.
They're satisfying to them, but they're not objectively satisfying.
Well, they will. Depends on what you mean by objective. Like, if you want to go to the moral compass, but I'm not here to defend secularism, but you can probably grant me that secular people can make logical, rational arguments for when they think personhood is conferred. Even though you're right, personhood is a theoretical concept. It's not empirical. We can't really test for it. There's no button we can hit to go, bing, now you're a person. Just like there's no button you can hit to go, bing, now you're ensouled, right? Which is why the conservative approach from Christians is to go, well, we don't know when it's ensouled. So we're going to be as cautious as possible to make sure that we don't mess that up. But I would say again, if you have a Christian leader,
Well, wait. If you're talking about ensoulments, they don't know it's ensouled. Well, the church history is not too fun. Oh, come on, I almost went in. It's not too fun on her side because they would be, even if they did, so like Aquinas and other church fathers, other people, they didn't know when ensoulment began, but it was still wrong to get abortions regardless of ensoulment. It's wrong to destroy the body. So in Christianity, it wouldn't matter if ensoulment occurs or not. It's still wrong to get it.
Policy by going, well, we don't want to do wrong, so we're going to go most conservative as possible. That's not really how the state works. It doesn't work that way. That's not how our current state works, and I think that's for good reason.
But that's not my preferred argument against abortion anyways. Why?
Sure, we don't need to get into abortion.
I mean, I think when we talk about Christian nationalists, this is a pet issue people bring up to say that they don't like it. I'm like, this is one of the reasons Christian nationalism would be awesome if we say, okay, political leaders who operate under Christian values will protect the right to life of every member of the human species and protect direct acts of killing innocent members of our community, abortion being one of them. So would it be permissible in your view of America if Christians use the democratic process to make abortion illegal, which they have in several states?
Depending on the process by which they're like, as long as they're supplying logic and reason for it, that's satisfactory. Like, I think the future like ours argument is a fine enough argument to make. But if people are not compelled by it, and they reject it, and they go for the consciousness argument, which I think is also a good logical argument. I think that that's how democracy works. I have no problem with Christians advocating for things, like I said, because of their Christian ethics at all. I have an issue when the reason why they insist it must be policy and the reason that they're pushing for policy only goes back to the Bible. Their only justification that they can find for it is, well, God said so. It's like, that's not how we work the state, and it should not be how we work the state. That's how the founding fathers thought of this, for good reason.
Well, then, do you think then my further proposal would be that I think all people of goodwill, but especially all Christians, have a moral duty to use the political apparatus to protect unborn children from abortion?
No, not necessarily.
Well, okay, what is...
I mean, did Christians have a moral duty back when, like, Rome was, like, genociding Christians to, like, overthrow Rome?
They had a duty to save children however they could.
Only children? Not adult Christians that are getting genocided too?
Well, the people who were being killed, there were people who were adults who were being martyred, for example, and then there were children who were just being exposed in the wilderness and left for dead, and Christians went and they rescued them. But Christians living under the ancient Roman Empire, where you do not have a democratic process to be able to change society, it's a lot different. What?
Should you try to overthrow Rome as a Christian?
Paul said no, because it would probably be a suicide mission and generate more harm.
I don't know if that's why Paul said no, though, right? I think it's a reasonable answer for you.
He said, in Romans 13, he says that the state authorities are placed by God.
Sure, exactly.
And they wield the sword. But I think the point there is that you can do good within that system, but once you get enough power, and here's the thing, I don't believe in sola scriptura, so I don't think that Christian moral principles are just whatever the Bible says, because now we have power. We have the ability to shape the state so it procures as many goods as possible. And one of those goods, so I would say, like, what's wrong with this argument? Every Christian has a moral obligation to vote to end slavery. If it were 150 years ago and there's a vote, you'd have a moral obligation to vote to end slavery. And today, you have a moral obligation to vote to end legal abortion.
I think that
would you agree with both of those statements?
I would say both of these are completely sound arguments to make. Both of these are completely sound, and I think individual Christians should be utilizing exegesis and eisegesis to determine the way in which they ought to orient themselves. But this isn't commentary on whether or not the state should be a Christian nationalistic state in the way that I'm specifically describing, which is a state in which the laws are built on the back of saying the Bible said so.
Sure.
That's the type of thing that I have huge issue for, and absolutely American Christian nationalism is going to. I just want to come back.
But there's a spectrum.
Quickly, because we run away from this. You keep on saying secular people are forcing a religious view on Christians. But I feel like what we're doing is we're kind of slipping the word religious in when we mean a philosophical view, right? Most secular people are for freedom of religion. There are some anti-theists who are not for that. And I think anti-theists are cringe. And I think that their arguments are very unsatisfying. Which is why most atheists don't agree with anti-theists on this. But most atheists, if you ask them, do you think that there should be freedom of state? They would say yes. And informed atheists would probably give you a logical argument for why would they might harken back to laws, but they would have some sort of good logical argument within their own contextual framework of why they think that that is a good thing. And so I don't think that
the reason that I said secularism imposes a religion is because I think that for many people who are not religious, their base foundation for, well, why is this true or why is this right or wrong is because I feel that way. And so I think your concern is Christians will say, well, God told me so. But that's just a description over I feel that way for many people. So I think there's many secular people, they don't have God talk, but they use the same arbitrary foundation of I just feel like it's a baby when it's born. Or I just feel that anybody who loves each other should be allowed to get married. And so there I would say, well, that they're getting to put that into the law, and it has way less, because it's false. Well, it's not going to have reasons to support it like my view does.
They haven't put it into law. They're fighting for
sure. Oh, no,
it's the same way that I think it's not, right? In fact, they're fighting for it in the same way that I'm saying Christians are allowed in democracy to fight for these laws, and I think that that's totally fine. I think also saying, well, I think a lot of people, they just come to their conclusion because I feel that way.
Wait, that's accurate, though. No, that's accurate. No, I'll be right back. No, that's actually accurate. Excuse me. Scooch. Well, that's not. I don't see any close.
On the shame I hide, but I'm in no way ready to face the sun. God knows what I've become, 'cause every cold and dark perverted room, every touch that wasn't meant for you, I could have been somebody's baby, but till then I guess I'll just keep coming. Give me all that I need from the shoes on my knees, babe.
Fat people who might work
Your physical. Okay, so obesity is a bodily condition. So your analogy would be more comparing the status of being overweight with the status of having same-sex attraction, and so then those are just biological.
Yes. Exactly. Biological fact. The action of eating too much food and engaging in homosexuality, yeah. This is a good debate.
Behaviors.
Yeah.
So I would say most people I know would not take out a kid just for the fact that he has same-sex attractions.
Yeah.
Now, if your child is engaging in sexual activity,
If your child is engaging in eating thousands of Twinkies despite you telling him not to, it's biological behaviors.
yeah, I think
Well, if your children know, if they're grown adults, should you kick them out? I don't know. I mean, they're adults and they can make their own decisions. We also don't have to affirm their decisions.
There's a difference, though, between, in one case, you are causing harm to yourself. In another case, you could...
Yeah.
Stay alive.
All right. First, I don't think that parents should be throwing out their kids, kicking their kids out of the house, unless they are a threat to other people within the house. So, for example, do you think parents should kick out a kid? Maybe they're not doing Twinkies, but they're doing heroin.
Yes.
I think it's complicated, so there is good evidence that
It's tricky. That's tricky, but I could see some case like doing heroin, like.
that barrier needs to be erected. So if you have toddlers in the house, for example, and you've got an adult, take you.
And mind you, heroin is obviously I don't really need to explain this, but heroin is a very powerful drug. It is not easy to get. Once you're hooked on heroin, it is extremely difficult to get off of it.
That's using heroin. Typically,
You give a toddler and a 16-year-old older brother's using heroin. That's a dangerous situation.
So I guess I'm backing this from just mental health system because I have been as an addiction counselor. Typically, when you're talking about a 16-year-old, right, if it's heroin, usually there's criminological elements, which is why there's going to be reason. But typically, you don't kick them out of the house. Usually, you find them rehab placements, and the parents aren't saying you're not
send them to conversion therapy.
Well, I would
for their drug use.
The issue is that rehab works for addiction. Conversion therapy didn't work for me.
I think if you have a teenager who is going out and having intercourse with 50 people a week, could be same sex, could be opposite sex, I don't care.
I probably wouldn't kick that child out. I'd probably be talking to that child about safety.
Okay, yeah.
If they keep doing it, I can understand if they keep doing it, because sexual activity, I can kind of understand. Like, if you're clearly an adult, I think sex is something that really only, people should be doing in marriage. But certainly something not children should be doing. Like, it's clearly an adult activity. So the child is clearly illustrating that, okay, I keep telling you not to do this, and you're under my roof, and you're going to do, as parents, generally speaking, children should listen to their parents. They're going to live under their roof. If they don't like that, they can just leave. When they're adults, of course. It really depends.
But I think you're going to be policing their behavior. One, primarily because they're engaged in evil, so the evils are going to have a negative effect on them, their soul, and their bodies, and a negative effect on the other people they're engaging in that behavior with. You can get people pregnant, you can cause abortions.
Do you think I'm opposed to parents policing their children's behavior?
Yes, I'm going to start with question 1, 2, and 3. Okay, let's read this together. 2x squared plus... Yeah, I already read it and I still get it. Okay,
I don't think so.
Like, take make a reasonable guess. Like anything I've said, do you think that I'm the type of person?
I think we just disagreed on the line about when a kid should get kicked out.
Kicking out, because I think kicking out, I mean a very specific thing, right? I mean, you're cutting them off. Okay, I'm thinking of my friend Stacey Cage. She just made a post about this recently. She's trans. She was kicked out. Her parents will not talk to her. I have several friends of this about being gay. They won't. She's not welcome in their home, no matter whatsoever. They will not interface with her whatsoever. Whereas the child with addiction, what we're talking about of the kicking out, what we're actually talking about is sending them to a separate part of the country. We'll be visiting all the time. But we totally welcome them for holidays. They understand the necessity of placing this heroin-addicted child in rehab to get them better. But they usually do it sadly. It's not something that they're delighted to do. And they are constantly doing everything that they can to remind the child, you are still part of the family. Whereas in the gay instance, when I'm saying kicking out, it's obvious that they're saying, you're not part of this. It's a disownment.
I don't think this is that unique, though, to what we're originally talking about, which is the idea of a nation being working towards Christian principles. We're just disagreeing. We just disagree about some of those principles about when is sex moral or immoral. We agree. Would you agree immoral sex ought to be shamed at the least and outlawed at the most?
So immoral sex, I'll just write that down. I will put a pin in it because I will answer that question. But before we go there, the reason that we're talking about this is an accusation that you made against secular ethics is that people just operate on because I feel that way. And I said, well, Christians operate a lot really similarly in that they, for example, would kick out a child who's gay, but not kick out a child who's gluttonous, even though they might acknowledge that the biological behavior of their condition is driving the behavior. And I think that is the type of like silly epistemic looseness that Christians have.
I would agree with you that it's a double standard if you're going to kick out someone for engaging in sodomy, but not fornication. I consider they're both sexual evils that are grave. But gluttony is just, it's bad, but it's not as bad as misusing sex because sex is so important, sacred, and powerful in the eyes of the Lord. No, that's not true. That is absolutely not true. What you were thinking about is that is a common thing that many Protestants will say. All sin is equal in the sense that it makes us disqualified.
Yes. He's going to explain it. So, that's something a lot of Protestants get confused. Yeah, all sins are equal in the sense that every time we sin, it's an affront against God. That is true, and God expects perfection. That is true. The only perfect person was Jesus, right? However, to say that all sins are equal in the sense that they have the same, every sin is just as bad, that's obviously false. Again, every sin is an offense against God, but they're not equally wrong. Stealing is nowhere near as bad as murder. God will punish people. And in the Bible, this is also true. In hell, murderers obviously would be punished more than a common thief. I mean, in Catholicism, that's why they have mortal and venial sins. Venial sins hurt the relationship between God. Mortal sins, right, break the relationship between God. And they can send you to hell. Mortal sins can send you... if you die in the state of a mortal sin in Catholicism, you will go to hell.
From entering into heaven.
Right.
But it is
not... being gay disqualifies you as being gluttonous.
Not possessing the sanctifying grace of God in the soul makes it impossible for you of your own human merits to even desire God in heaven. You just wouldn't in your human nature. So all sin disqualifies you of heaven in that sense. But it is clear there are some sins that are more grave than others. Jesus himself talked about people who would relax the least of these laws, being the least in the kingdom of heaven. So even Jesus ranked the moral laws. It's very just obvious that some sins are graver than other sins. And at least, yes, from a Catholic tradition, we've had that for 2,000 years.
Again, it's like killing 25 people is clearly way worse than stealing a loaf of bread, like Walmart.
So you would reject that?
Some would. Some evangelicals would. A lot of other Protestants would agree with what I said.
So I would agree with what you said.
Even in the same category, while yes, they're both wrong, I would say, let's say you steal a cupcake from a bakery. I would say stealing a cupcake from a bakery is still wrong, right? It is worse to steal billions of dollars from people.
Not all sins are equal necessarily. The issue is that, first of all, when we're talking about these two types of sin of who you kick out, the idea that you kick out the gay kid, I imagine there's other major serious carnal sins that you would agree parents shouldn't be kicking their child out.
I think removing a child is always something of a last resort. I have 3 kids. If they're doing something really bad, that's good.
Would you disown a gay kid?
No, I'm not going to disown any of my kids, but I'm going to make sure they get their help.
Sure.
But where we disagree is, I do think, I mean, if you're going to say, oh, well, you know, why do Christians make such a big deal about LGBT stuff? Well, it's a negative. There are negative aspects of this lifestyle. For example, men who engage in sexual relations with other men, they have a 2,000% greater chance of getting anal cancer.
What's more harmful to a body, being fat or being gay?
It depends on you. I don't know. Anal cancer is probably really, really bad. Being fat is
What's
not
the
great.
likelihood of getting anal cancer? Because women can engage in anal sex with it.
But they don't do it to the extent that men and other men do.
Sure, but A, what's the likelihood of B? Obviously being fat.
Okay, yeah.
It's hard. Than being gay.
Yeah. Well, again. Yeah, she's correct. Again. Being gay, the attraction, there's nothing. So being the attraction or the proclivity is not the problem. It's not even a sin. I know there are Protestants who do believe being gay itself is a sin. Being gay is not a sin. Practicing homosexuality is the sin. So I'll give you that, yeah, I agree. Being obese is more harmful for your health than practicing homosexuality. Unless you're practicing a lot, right? Like, being like 700 pounds is worse than for your skin, right? I mean, for your body. And of course, being fat, you can get like cancer. Well, you can get heart disease being fat, and a lot of diabetes and all those other things. And of course, eating a lot of junk food can also kind of cause cancer too, different types of cancer. So I will agree for true that is true. Being gay, yeah, yes, having sex with a lot of people is very dangerous. I'll tell you that. You can get STDs, especially like anal sex. You can get STDs and get anal cancer, right? So having sex with a lot of people, especially like anal sex, right? Very high chance of getting STDs. Absolutely.
Sure, I agree that being fat is fat. That's why I believe that there is to live a healthy lifestyle. Sure, that's why I disagree with that. But I do think it's a lot different than engaging in relationships.
I can grant you that.
Well, I think what he was about to say is like, it's bad because obviously sex can lead to the creation of another human being. It should lead to an even greater sin, obviously, of abortion. Right? We're being fat. I mean, yeah, it does. I will say yes. Being fat in your family does affect other people. It does.
These are individual acts. The problem is, like, weight is something that's a byproduct of something we have to do, eating.
Yes.
Whereas sexual behaviors, we can purposely engage in them. It's a lot different from.
Yeah, like you have, like, yeah, on the species level, yes. On the species level, yeah, the human species, yeah, you have to have sex in order to, survive, right? Right. But, right, on the individual level, yeah, but like everybody needs to eat food. Like, if you don't eat food, you're gonna die. Again, at the individual level, right? If everybody stopped having sex in the human species, I mean, okay, there's IVF, right? But for the most part, everybody did stop having sex. And yeah, the human species would go extinct. What did those things even do? Those special split. But like, you need to eat food to survive. There's just no doubt about it. If you don't eat, you're going to die.
I don't think anyone would reasonably argue that you must eat Twinkies. I think you could actually go your whole life.
Yeah, not Twinkies necessarily. Yeah, you can go absolutely, but again, some people eat too much of the good types of food, like steak. Okay, maybe not steak specifically, but like meat. You need meat. Okay, maybe no, not necessarily, but people eat too much of that too.
You're eating cake and Twinkies, it'd be fine.
You have to eat something. You have to eat something to live. You don't have to have sex to live.
Sure. Yeah, it's not a fundamental thing. But to go back, the reason why this is coming...
And I want to return some of my stuff, too. So.
Sure, we can do that.
Yeah. Species as a whole...
The thing is that we keep with driving here, which is that your criticism of secular ethics is saying, well, they're just being like kind of unthoughtful. Basically, there's no epistemological system, there's no thought process or logic or reasoning here. And I would say Christians too. There are very thoughtful, very rational, reasonable Christians like yourself.
And that's why I would say when you're comparing ethical systems, you should compare best to best. So it would be fine comparing even the best secular ethical systems to the best Christian systems. And I've been on the show many times. Yeah, I say many by now. And in other debate formats, where when I press my interlocutor to defend their secular moral principle, it leads to stuff that's so gross. Brian told me not to say it, so the channel gets striked. Yeah, so sure. That makes me it's happened multiple times. Sure. And so that makes me very suspicious that that's an ethical system we want to
contend with the fact that Mr. Wilson is on your side, and you have to deal with the fact that
he doesn't want to be on his.
Well, the issue is that, like, Christian ethics also lead to really terrifying things, right? The Crusades were done along with Christian law and principle. And we might say
they say crazy words.
The Fourth Crusade, not good.
Of course, yeah, there's going to be abuses.
But this is
elements within her, but using war, I mean, I love in the Catholic tradition that
chosen war for mostly gold plating in the case of the Third and Fourth Crusade. That is what
I would recommend.
War is very complex, but the Crusades, like obviously the Holy Wars, they responded to kick out the Muslim invaders. Like, the Crusades is very complex.
That our listeners, Thomas Madden has a very good book, The History of the Crusades. Steve Wyckoff has a book called The Glory of the Crusades. There's a lot that people remember being a small minority of bad actors using things to their advantage to enrich themselves. But many other people doing things like liberating the Holy Land from Muslim occupation so that Christians like you and I can go there. Because like it stinks when I go to the Chapel of the Ascension in Jerusalem, it's controlled by a Muslim trust. We can't even say Mass there.
So I guess there's two things. Yeah, you have to pray to Iraq. And so actually wars done by Christians to fight over land after the veil was torn. I have very complicated feelings around it, but no one would grant you that like the Fourth Crusade or the Third Crusade were like morally good. What essentially happened was a number of knights were going on a Third Crusade. They basically didn't have the funding to go where they wanted to go beat up Muslims, so they just went to a Christian nation and plundered it.
But here's the difference, though, that when Christians do evil, there is a standard we can identify where they've fallen short. Because I can talk about secularism, where Marxist states like the Soviet Union, North Korea, others that believe that atheism is the best for human flourishing, have implemented horrible atrocities against people. but there's no standard of being. There's a standard of being a morally good Christian, but atheism is just the negation of God. There's no objective standard for a morally good atheist. That runs the gamut.
There's some atheists that believe in like natural law, so there are some people that believe in laws.
And I believe that they have identified something that ultimately has a Christian foundation, but they don't fully explain that.
Here's the issue, Trent. I do too.
Okay.
Because I'm a Christian ethicist. I'm a divine fan theorist. The issue is what I don't do when I talk to secular people, or what I think is very lazy to do, is to out of hand dismiss secularism because it might be like a subjective type of system. I think that that's intellectually lazy because obviously there are contextualist or coherentist systems that are logically reasonable. Yes, they end in circularity just like we end in dogma. However, are robust, they're logical, you can track them all the way through, they can lead to good. Aristotle led to a lot of principles before Jesus.
But he has I would say that's a theistic system ultimately grounded in something he calls
It's not a theistic system.
It's just not getting when you reach the ultimate ends.
I see what it is. Honestly, I think that God
And virtually everything.
Yeah, of course. I agree with that. The issue is the Christian system, for example, it actually doesn't get the game's first goal here in the late going to this frame. What are you doing right here?
Why they're being aggressive, James? I mean, it's got that attack mentality. They're not sitting back, and now that they put one in, it's about staying
Give Caesar Paul, he does say that, but we have to also remember in the book of Acts, when Peter and John are brought before the Sanhedrin, which basically have political authority over the apostles, and they said, we told you not to preach the name of Jesus. And what Peter and the apostles said to them, they said, we must obey God rather than men.
Of course, if your state insists on you doing something wrong, right? If our state made a law that said not only is abortion legal, but you, Trent, have to get one if you are under the age of 24, like some crazy state. Of course, Christians should resist against that. A state should not compel you necessarily to personally act in sin. But that's a very big difference between making policy and law that is only justified by the Bible and telling, importantly, non-Christians that they must comply to that as well. That's my concern.
What I would say, though, is you're right. If it only relies on the Bible, I think that is not a sufficient way of arguing in a pluralist society. But I want you to agree with me that I would say Christians have a moral duty to rid the world of unjust things.
Everybody's welcome hunting. Whatever your style, there's somebody who wants to buy. Mr. Close admits.
Christians, and that's a huge one. Let's think it through. Christians have a moral duty to rid the world of unjust things.
Yeah, but unjust is going to be doing a lot of heavy lifting, of course. I think I certainly operate in this way, right? I do my best to be pretty loud and political about things that I think are unjust, but also about things wrong.
So, for example,
I just don't know if I prefer that all Christians, but sure, let's for the sake of this conversation.
So, for example, the civil rights movement. So, what would we have? Would be about 70 years ago in Alabama and the South. You have the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, SCLC. That was the movement working to end legal racial segregation in public accommodations. And so,
what's good, cuz?
Play resumes here as he wins the draw inside the offensive zone.
What's good, cuz?
Barnes works it around the corner. He got all of that hit. Cap's got the puck in his own zone. Here they come on the rush.
see it after practice, James, like 5-puck breakaway after breakaway. Well, this goaltender, he does his job, making himself big as possible and taking away any daylight.
Both teams are set. They're ready to drop the puck. The Nighthawks win the draw. Caps got it against the boards. Lets it fly. Denies him. He got all of it. And down he goes as the puck goes free. And a nice poke check inside the neutral zone. Grabbed along the boards by Gill. Carries it into the offensive end up the middle. The Nighthawks looking against the half wall. And the puck escapes the zone, and they'll be forced to tag up. Driving right to the front. And he elects to explore his options. The 360 with the puck. The Icebreakers gain possession. Scoops up the puck here. Takes it in front. With authority. Great defensive effort with the stick. Here they come on the attack. He's got a step. Oh, he's pulling off the pipe.
Well, he had the goaltender beat, James. Quick release, and it just goes off the post and out. That's an unlucky bounce.
Icing being waved off here.
Well, that's great hustle and anticipation to be able to get to the hash marks first, James.
And he sidesteps the check there. He tries to tuck it in. Slides the puck over. Gains the zone through the middle. Here's a chance in front. And he'll hang on to it to regroup here for a moment. Moves with the puck in the corner. Just a little too much contact and couldn't hang on to the puck.
Well, I love what he's trying to do here, James. He wants